sucker punch drunk. Sobered up and wearing my bloody heart on my sleeve. And it's no fun being the last one to leave the party, and my ship's going down. I'm just one working class punk with razorback charm, but at least I never sold my soul for rock and roll. And it's no fun being the last one to leave the party, to leave the party. And my shit's going down. I could use that life more now. What's it gonna take to get an even break? I'm not looking for a favor, I'm looking for a fair shake. I'm just one. Yes, I'm just one. I'm just one. Cigs and drinking out of mason jars. You claim to be the Pontiac kid from New York, but you're just a wreck in a rusty old car. Boston won't have you, and Cali's just a little too far. So you throw on a Stroke CD and talk about where you've been and where you wanna be. You know the time we're the most real is when we talk about our dreams. I know you have your standards, I used to be like that, but I got a job that pays pretty good these days, and I just can't quit. So I eat a little humble pie and a whole lot of shit. So hold on, my troubled friend, something's waiting for you at the end of this road, but you're gonna have to pay a little dues and a whole lot of tolls. Cigs and drinking in the old dive bars. Got no claim I'm nothing, but at least I have a decent guitar. Boston's like a dream, and Cali's got too many stars. So I write another song on the fly and play it over and over and over and over and over and over until I'm satisfied. You know the time we're the most real is when we talk about our dreams. And I still have my standards, but I left a few behind. Cause I got too much to risk and not enough time. So roll on, my troubled friend. Something's waiting for you at the end of this road. But you're gonna have to pay a little dues and a whole lot of tolls. Yeah, you're gonna have to pay a little dues and a whole lot of tolls.
Jan and Mike Sheehy of the Milkhouse Heaters. Welcome, guys. That was fabulous. The first couple of songs. That was awesome. I got to look at my notes here. This is, yes, episode number 35. I need coffee. Number 35 of the Tasty Twist with Sammy B. Welcome once again, everybody. I'm Sammy Blanchette, host, producer, and local musician here in Ludlow, Vermont. We got Patrick doing the work here today at Okemo Valley TV. I can't thank this place once again for having this as a platform for 4 months already. We've been doing this already. So how are you guys? Welcome. Have you ever done a podcast before? I guess first and foremost, we can throw that out there.
I don't think we have done a podcast.
Yeah, you've certainly got quite the history dating back years and years ago. First and foremost, happy anniversary, 30th anniversary, and 36 years together, correct? Off and on with all the different bands and duo work.
And we met in a rehearsal room.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yep.
Out of Boston area? Or?
in the Merrimack Valley area. In Lawrence, Mass. It was this rock and roll rehearsal space. And I was a smoker at the time. I was wandering around, going from room to room, trying to find a match and a light for my cigarette. And I met my match.
That's awesome.
He did, and I was there.
Did you actually have the light for it?
I don't know if I had the light, but I was there for an audition for another band.
Yeah.
And the bass player never showed up. And Mike was a bass player, and the drummer of that band said, "Hey, you're a bass player. Why don't you go get your bass and jam with us?"
I left the room first. I lit my cigarette, said hello. We introduced each other to Glenn, and the other guy introduced me to you, and then I went back down because I was waiting for my band to show up. And the drummer was like, he's a bass player. Maybe he can play for a while with us.
Yeah.
And so he came down and asked if I was like, sure. I grabbed my bass and went up. We started jamming, and
then your band showed up.
And then
he had to leave.
Then the other guy showed up, the bass player?
The bass player never showed up. And for me, it was a miserable audition, and I just couldn't wait for it to be over. Because it just...
Why is that? Just not feeling it?
It just
or
wasn't
just,
clicking for me.
It
just wasn't clicking. So, so I left thinking, oh, well, that didn't work out. And but thinking about Mike, and the drummer kept calling, and finally I picked up the phone and... spoke to him, and he's like, come back. And I said, no. He said, well, the guitarist that you didn't really care for is not here anymore, but just come back. And so I figured, well, why not? So I had met a guitarist, brought that one with me, and when I opened the door, Mike was there. And I said, is he in the band? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, taking my coat off.
Because you guys were the matches, so it had, right?
Yeah. the jamming that we did do before Mike's band showed up felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that? What kind of music was that?
So it was rock.
It was real indie. Jan was dressed up like a punk rocker. Yeah. She had spiky black hair, just decked out and looked really sharp. And so when I came back to jam with them, the singer, the guy who was playing, wanted to sing, and he kind of had Jan sit down, right? And we were playing a song, and it was like a cover song of a Boston band, and I was like, "What are we playing?" And he's like, "Oh, this is And I was like, why are we playing a cover of a Boston? So anyway, I said, I thought she was a singer. What doesn't she sing? And then, so I got her into the mix. And then right away, we kind of took over and we were like, what can we play? And we were like, let's do the Pretenders, Precious.
Sure, yeah.
And so we did that. And, I could tell immediately she could sing. And so my band kind of fell apart, and I was bugging the drummer for a long time. I was like, why don't we call up, let's get in touch with, that chick that was here and see if we can put a cool band together. And
how did you make the determination for you being on bass first and then go to Jan being on bass? What was that?
So that's a very long story.
Well, that's a long story. I guess like I was going to pin off this like so. Why the bass to start? Did it just feel good? Was it?
I was a bass player. I played in reggae bands.
Did you really? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was in a band that they were actually signed to a subsidiary of Tough Gong Records.
Okay.
The singer's brother was big on the island, and they had like Jimmy Cliff's people, percussionists playing on their record. And I joined this thing that was already in motion, and I was in a few bands. I started off with the guitar. Guitar was too hard, so I went to bass because I thought bass would be easy, like everybody does. But it's just a different instrument.
It's a completely different dynamic.
It is.
Most of the time people are playing a bass guitar that's 2 less strings than a regular 6-string, but there's some phenomenal 6-string bass players out there in the world, like all around. But it's a completely different dynamic as far as the guitar players get the front stage presence of like, hey, you're the star, this, that, blah, blah, and then like the singer and everything. But the bass player is just like hanging out in the back, making sure he's locking in sync with the drummer. It's got to be cool to have perspective from both of those rhythm instruments. Wouldn't you agree
It's funny that you should say that, because everybody used to tell me, I switched to bass because of bands like the Police in the early days, and the whole new wave and sort of reggae rock stuff that was coming out, Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
And I just love that stuff in it.
Great lineup of musicians you just named right there too, by the way. Yeah.
And people used to say that, the bass player's got to hang back with the drummer and just kind of play in the pocket. And I was like, no, it's a whole another thing, because bass players around that time really changed the way bass.
They were front and center. A lot of them. I mean, Sting was front and center. They were.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think Geddy Lee kind of started.
Geddy Lee.
Center
for sure. Yeah. And Geddy Lee also can play the keys. I mean, he held down so much.
He was doing a lot as a front man, and so bass players were becoming, especially in the new wave and punk world, they were becoming much more front and center.
Yeah, it's very rare. Like you mentioned the Police. Like I love both the Police and Rush. Like I've spent years like listening to them, and college and just in general, I'll still listen to them. But it's very rare to say to yourself, especially in the case of the Police, the guitar player, from everyone's eyes, is almost like the weak link. But yet Andy Summers is a monstrous guitar player. Like his rhythms and his sounds and everything. But you've got Sting and then
Copeland.
and Copeland. Yeah, Stuart Copeland. Yeah, it's just. It's amazing. And also, I guess you could say that about Rush. Alex Lifeson, monstrous guitar players, but everyone talks about Neil Peart and Geddy Lee. Did you get to see either band? Random off topic. Did you get to see either of those bands in your life?
I saw the Police. I saw the Go-Go's open up for the Police at a pretty small venue. But I saw them, and I saw the Talking Heads in a very small club on a stage about this size. Yeah. And I stood right off to the side, right on the side where...
That had to be an experience.
It was great. They only had 2 albums out. They had just released their 3rd one that week. And they were still a young bar band, and they weren't the big thing. But they were just amazing.
Did you guys cover any of their music in your career, the Talking Heads?
No, we were primarily original for years.
We were always an original band.
We did very, very few covers, and when we did do covers, they were obscure. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your time in Boston, because that was probably a pretty good chunk of your career before moving to Vermont, right? Like playing in the Boston area, right?
Yeah. So Mike was the bass player, and for a long time I sang, and I played acoustic guitar, I could play guitar, but I tended to just front bands as a singer.
We both did the songwriting and kind of did all the business and directed the bands and steered it in the direction that we wanted.
Like,
That was,
you know, we had a vision, and we knew, like,
Yeah.
people, we would say, you know, the band has a dress code. People would be like,
yeah.
and we'd say, no.
What did that consist of? What was the
Black.
dress code? Black? Yeah.
It was that simple, right?
Yep.
It was just like, just wear black.
Button
No-
down shirt
Didn't
or
matter.
like
Nope.
didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
We did photo shoots with professional photographers, and a couple of them we knew. But we would bring clothes, and if somebody didn't show up with stage clothing, I had extras.
He had
And it's
shirt.
like-
He would come with shirts
So-
in a garment bag.
a lot of the other
I
members.
played in the band with a drummer. He had 5 different short sleeve T-shirts in his truck because he sweated so much. So I know that feeling.
Yeah, and it was that simple. It's just, you know, we had a vision for what we needed to look like, what we needed to sound
Right.
like, and it was hard getting people to play along. People just wanted to just kind of just show up how they were dressed. They didn't see the strength in looking like a cohesive band,
Right.
You know, and it's like you have to.
Do you think that was do you think that was just maybe a sign of the times back then? Because the one that always comes to mind for me is the Beatles when they were like clean cut, you know, suit, like the early days when they had like the Chuck Berry sound, when they had like that real young, before they went like psychedelic, like
Right.
before like their
Yep.
last shows.
Right.
And listen, there's absolutely still nowadays nothing wrong with looking professional. I mean, anybody that's doing broadcasting, like for ESPN, for example, there's shirt and tie, like there's a corporate structure to it and everything. But if like a laid back sort of thing, like with a band, is that still like a thing where there should be, especially if you're looking to get to the next tier?
Well, if you want to get to the next tier, you better take how you present yourself seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
a lot of people don't want to admit that, and they don't want to. It's like uncool to, you know, to think about that and like plan it out. But if you want a record deal, or if you want any sort of acknowledgement at a higher level, then you're going to be judged on that.
There's an image that you need to present, and you need to be consistent with that. So,
Even grunge was
right.
about
flannel shirts and dressed down, and, you know, the whole Seattle scene was this, you know, it rained. They couldn't spike their hair, right? So you're talking about the new wave of the time, the punk rock
Yeah.
of the time. They live in a place where, you know, all the Aquanet in the world's not going to keep your hair sticking out. You know, it's just not.
There's also got to be that perception of the look with the instruments where sometimes the guitar and the bass is like down to your knees. You know how
Oh,
you
sure,
have
there
like
was that-
yeah,
there was
there
that
have to be that whole perception
So
as
when-
well
when
too.
you think
Yeah.
about,
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
you know, for us, when we were in high school, it was David Bowie, right? So I mean, it was
And he had
glam.
all the looks.
It was.
He had all the looks.
It was
Yeah.
glam, right? And
Yeah.
then out of that glam, you know, in the early '80s, you had Twisted Sister, you had Flock of Seagulls, you had
Yeah.
all of these new wave bands, B-52s. I mean, you
Yeah.
had-
Oh, yeah.
And everybody had a cohesive look. So in Boston at the time, you had, you know, 3,000 bands and 30 clubs. So it was cutthroat. That just to get a gig, it
Yeah.
was cutthroat. And
Was it majority cutthroat, or was there also, did you have like a handful of other duos or bands that you all worked kind of collectively together as far as happy competition?
There
Does that
was
make sense
some
to-
of that.
There were
was
cliques.
some of that. There
Yeah.
were definite
Cliques.
cliques, definite levels.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, you wanted to get off a Monday night, what they called a new music review
Yeah.
at the channels, and these bigger clubs. But in order to do that, they would give you tickets, and then they would count your tickets at the door to see how many people you brought in.
Yeah.
And so you would progress if you were starting to draw.
Yeah, and I find we'll get to the Vermont part of things, but I find Vermont doesn't stray. Vermont doesn't cling on to that aspect like too much of like how many bodies you put in the room. I have found in experience, it's more of if people that are already there, how do you keep them there? But I've definitely seen in Connecticut where it's like, no, you got to draw this number of people, and then as opposed to like a flat rate, you know, we give you the percentage of the door, blah blah blah. You know, the world continues to get more and more expensive, and I don't know how many bands and artists still want to fly by that philosophy. But again, it all depends on how serious you want to be.
Exactly.
I hate that mentality.
Yeah.
It's not the band's job to fill the room. I think it's the band's job to provide good entertainment, good music.
And if they bring a bunch of their fans, that's kind of an added bonus. It should be
Sure.
on to the club well, let's put it this way, like what we were talking about in like the pregame. It's a team effort, right? Everybody should be kind of like playing together. Like we all should be striving for the same goal. And instead of it being like at the end of the night, like the bar owner coming up to you, sorry, we're not going to have you back. You didn't bring enough people, and here's $50 less. Dude, nobody wins in that scenario.
Right,
you know,
right.
nobody. And I'm sure you guys have experienced that a lot more than me. I've only had a handful of times when I lived in Connecticut where you got underpaid what you verbally contracted with or whatever. And it's kind of infuriating. And it's like, we're all trying hard,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's 4 bands a night. In the city, so you have a 45-minute set.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I mean, to get on that, and so you also had to. The only thing that came off the stage between bands was the drum set. So you had to get there early because the back line of your amplifiers was stacked. So the headliner was way in the back, and then everybody else had to put their amps in front, so that bands tore off their stuff as the night progressed. And sometimes for big bands, there was a band called Fahrenheit that we opened for a lot, and they were very big. Their drum set would actually stay on the stage. So your drummer had to put his drum set in front, and then everybody kind of had to squish.
All of a sudden, the bass player and the guitar player have less and less room.
And in order to just keep the night flowing, stuff just peeled away off the stage. I mean,
So, how was it from your guys' experience? Would the main band sound check first, like even like well before you guys, and then it was up to you guys to then sound check, and then a half hour later, it's your time. It's your time to do the show.
Yeah, you would be if you were the first one on, you were the last one. Your sound check might not even happen. It might just
You might do a line level check.
Just line levels, and that's it. You go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but you were expected to be at the club at 6 o'clock.
What was the biggest club in Boston that you've played? I obviously read a bunch about your bio and everything. You've shared the stage with the likes of like the Black Crowes and Fuel, right? Like I read a little bit up on that. That's awesome, by the way, sharing the stage. But what was the club like? So in Connecticut, there's Toad's Place, and Toad's Place, a lot of people like know about that in New Haven. But what was the Toad's Place type place in the Boston area?
Probably the Channel.
I would say it's between the Channel and the Paradise, right?
Yeah, the Paradise is
I think I've been to the Paradise for a show, but
Yeah.
I haven't played. Yeah.
So the Channel and the Paradise
Holds a couple thousand people, right?
The Channel doesn't hold. I mean, the Paradise holds a small.
Yeah, it's maybe
500.
It's not that many people,
Yeah.
but it's just got a lot of cachet, you know.
Yeah.
And the Channel held a lot more people, and you'd see some. You could see 10,000 Maniacs at the Channel when they were on their way up.
And that's just in the audience.
In general, overall career question, what's the largest crowd you guys have ever played in front of?
Black Crowes.
30,000 people.
30,000 people.
Yeah.
They did a count because.
So there were 30,000 in the audience before the Black Crowes took the stage?
No, there were 30,000 people when we were sound checking at 11 o'clock in the
That's
morning.
awesome.
It was a free show.
It was a free show, outdoor festival.
Yeah. It was for a radio station. Did it?
And this was with the punk band or duo?
No. Boston was all full bands.
All full bands.
All full bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't do the duo thing till we came
So
here.
you came up here.
Duos of Vermont.
Yeah. So you guys, besides all the various groups that you've shared the stage with, am I correct in that you had a bunch of your originals when you were in Boston at the time licensed to like ABC, ESPN, VH1? That's a pretty big accomplishment. That's that's.
We had some really well recorded songs, and they were done in really professional studios, and the quality was there. So we got our foot in the door with some talent buyers for the background music on like the X Games, stuff like that. And ESPN2 and like
Winter and summer? Or, or is the X Games just winter? I
No,
forget.
the X Games, it was indoor motocross.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy.
Well, they did it in France. That
It was in France.
So there was both.
Yeah.
But I think it started off as winter, but I'm not sure. But once you get your foot in the door, we made a huge mistake by dropping the ball and not staying connected with that guy because he just wanted more stuff of ours. And then it was in a show. There was this show on ABC called Making the Band.
No,
it was
Making the Band was on VH1.
Oh, it was O-Town.
O-Town.
It was
Yeah.
about this guy who
Oh,
was
yeah.
putting
Yeah, I
a
remember
boy
that.
band
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't that was one of the many boy bands around
Yeah,
that
and
time,
we
Yeah.
right?
had-
Yeah.
we-
Like
It was a
NSYNC
reality
back-
show about putting a band together, a boy band together.
But then it became a band, I think,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
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 because
so-
that was right around the time NSYNC, Backstreet Boys.
Right.
Yeah, I was 8 or 9 years old. I remember hearing that on the bus going to school all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
So we had some stuff licensed to that show.
Yeah.
There was a few other things.
And it's funny because the lyric on that song was "You better get back, boy."
Yeah, exactly. It's probably why they liked it. You better, and
Yeah.
that's what the whole chorus was. You better get back, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now your music that was licensed, is it still being played out there on those stations
No.
today, or?
Yeah. I mean, if the shows are in syndication, then they would that music.
But I mean, like, did any of those originals like get picked up to future shows beyond that? Like,
I don't think
did
so.
the station? Okay, yeah.
The sync license was just for that.
ESPN.
Yeah. Is that part of the cutthroatness of like the industry, or just like come and go, or?
Yeah, I think you sync they sync it to a certain show, and that's that. You know.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask, you don't have to give a figure, but there had to have been royalties involved with that, I would imagine, right?
So
Like, you know.
the thing is,
Again, you don't have to give dollar figure. I'm just
Is-
saying, like, there should be some monetary.
we
you know,
dropped the ball. We were so clueless with the business
Yeah.
that we didn't really collect anything.
Yeah.
And there's a whole method to collecting, and you can collect on gigs. Like when we played in front of 30,000 people, right, for that big outdoor show with the Black Crows. The reason why they count heads is because they have to report how many people were at that show, so the bands can get royalties
From performance royalties.
And it's easy
hopefully
to
more
do.
than just 5 cents a head, right? You know,
It's easy to do. All you have to do is fill out a form,
Include your set list.
include your set list, and you get paid
Send
per
it to
song,
send it to your pro.
per person.
So BMI or ASCAP or whoever your pro is, you send that to them, and then you get paid for that. Yeah.
And at that time, was all of your originals trademarked and licensed already,
No,
like when you
no,
were
'cause
playing?
we
Yeah,
was-
because that I'm just playing hypothetical here. That could have been an easier thing from a legality perspective of like, okay, if your stuff's already copyrighted, this can be an easier, quicker way to then get the royalties deserved if you report that and stuff.
We had an entertainment lawyer
Yeah.
working for us too, and he didn't take care of any of this
No,
stuff.
no.
We thought that he was going to take care of us.
What he took
It's like,
care of-
what am
what
I
he took
paying-
care
what
of
am I
was-
paying you for?
Exactly. He took care of the money that we.
Yeah,
that we
I'm sure
paid him.
I'm sure Mike and Jan at the time, you guys were just happy that you're living this life.
Exactly.
At the time, yeah. The business side of things, it's always going to be there, but sometimes you forget that you got a 50-50 that as well too. Sometimes you're just like, dude, this is awesome. We're playing in front of 30,000 people. Yeah, we'll get around to the business side eventually. Yeah, but
Well, yeah, and trying to find a manager that didn't want money up front first. It's kind of like, look, we're not getting paid very much,
Right.
so we can split whatever we're getting paid with you.
sure.
But if you want this fee right away, we don't have it. Let's
Right.
work together so that when the money is coming in, then we can talk about a splitting ratio.
Yeah, as long as that's communicated first, and then it's like, hey,
And
the
we
more
would-
we work together,
And we
right,
would
right,
communicate that first, but a lot
Right.
of these managers were like, "No, I don't work for
Yeah,
free."
or they just never return your phone calls
Right,
or
right.
again and like
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Because-
and these guys were like kind of latched on to us because we were starting to do really well. And a band needs to be savvy and learn this stuff because you work hard and you get that attention and you think they're going to just take it from there, but you really need to know and have an agreement and like sit down and talk about what's going to who's going to do what.
Yeah.
And we were good
Like
at
a formal
being-
business meeting. It should
Yeah.
be like an actual like sit down, whether it's paper contract or just looking at each other eye to eye. This is what we have going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they just, they were using us as like a stepping stone to meet other people in the industry. And
How did you guys take that?
it sucked. It
Yeah.
was terrible.
Yeah.
It's like,
I was about to say,
but
yeah.
I look back and it's like shame on us for not being savvy enough to like take control of that.
Yeah.
And you work really hard and you get lazy and you just think, oh, these guys are gonna just take it from here.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
No.
Yeah.
And of course, these days a band can do an awful lot by them on their own.
Well, DIY is so much better today
But
than it
you
was
still
then.
have to learn this stuff like the royalties and how to file for it. You can file for
Absolutely, yeah.
royalties for every single gig. We don't do that yet.
No, because the other thing is that, we used to play only originals because a lot of the clubs around here weren't paying their dues to the pros, right?
Right.
So a lot of rooms stopped having
Does that
music.
include BMI or ASCAP?
Yeah.
That
So-
includes
so
like the
perf-
licensing
So yeah,
companies.
when I
right.
say pros,
Right.
I'm sorry, I mean performance rights.
That's what I thought.
organizations.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I thought. Yeah,
so,
yeah. Right,
clarify
right,
that.
yeah.
Thank you. So your performance rights organization is going to collect the fees for you playing.
Mm-hmm.
So any room you play, you could submit a set list to BMI and say I
Right.
played, XYZ club, and then they can see if XYZ club is paying them the annual fee.
Right.
And then you can get your money. But say you're playing a small startup restaurant, they don't have the money to join ASCAP.
Right.
Right?
And you don't
Well,
even
you
want to
know-
put them on the radar because once you put them on the radar,
Yeah.
then they get attacked by BMI, and then they get attacked by ASCAP, and then and they're knocking at their door saying you have to pay us this much.
Right.
But guys, you know what's bizarre about that though? Like you say to yourself, like, okay, in all walks of life, businesses or the higher ups, like I don't know, it's just say like these licensing companies or like the IRS, like picking and choosing their battles of like who they're like going after or whatever. Like sometimes like the small clubs that aren't paying them, they get whacked just because like someone from a licensing company found like a Facebook post like,
Right,
of someone doing that. Like, why do they have to go out like the little guys or whatever? It just they're not hosting music like all that often. It's
'Cause
just
the
it's
whole
infuriating,
Industry
Yeah,
collapsed,
So-
and they're not making money on the
Right.
other end.
And it goes
Right.
it goes deeper than that. Hold music on the phone.
Yeah.
That's a whole industry for somebody sitting in his house with a little Casio or a little MIDI setup, and he can just create hold music because they're not allowed to just use the radio or use some other recorded song. Stores, you go shopping in the store, if they've got songs, they have to buy that soundtrack. They have to
Right.
pay to use it.
Right.
And so it gets really deep.
And rightfully so. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that is how the original artists do get some money at the end. So if we were on the positive side of that, they'd be like, "Yep, that has to happen."
Right,
yeah,
right,
I get it.
right.
Yeah.
But what happens
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
a small room can't afford to pay that, so
You
what
end
they'll-
up shutting.
So
the
then,
room
now
down.
they can't have
They
like
can't have
any local
entertainment.
artists at all. They can't have any
they
artists,
can't
right?
have
Exactly.
entertainment.
Yeah.
So that's
And if they get caught trying to sneak by again,
Right.
it could be a big thing. Yeah.
and so a lot
Yeah.
of rooms were saying only original music,
Right.
and hopefully you're not going after getting paid through the
Right.
pros for your original music.
And was that challenge, because I'm dealing with this now also too, being a full-time solo acoustic artist in Vermont. We kind of were talking about this before recording and everything. At that point, original music, like people don't like change. They want to hear what they know, right?
Yes.
So, right.
Yeah.
So how was that earlier on in your careers as far as like, okay, so now this place only wants our original music. And for you guys, I'm sure it was like, well, great, this is what we do anyways. But hoping a different audience every night receives that positively. That's got to be hard at first to like be like,
It
well,
is. It is. And that's why we're moving into more covers. And we're enjoying it too. I was always against covers, but now we take covers that we really love,
Yeah.
and we make it our own.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
Talk about some of those. Like, who are your artists that you like covering now if you were to do covers and shows?
So some of the covers we're doing, we do our own version of Baba O'Reilly by The Who. We cover...
Always thought it was called Teenage Wasteland, by the way, years ago. Not
No,
Baba O'Reilly.
Yeah, everybody
Right.
thinks it's Teenage Wasteland.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
We are all guilty of that.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
They're all
You're right.
wasted.
Right. And so our version is night and day to theirs.
Yeah,
So it's really
yeah.
kind of fun.
But we do a cover of the Box Tops,
The letter.
The Letter.
So is that the same song that Joe Cocker did a
Yes,
version of?
it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love his version. Where he's got the female vocals in the background at the end. My baby wrote me a letter.
That's a great version.
Yeah, oh
Yeah,
my God.
that's
it
a
is.
great
Yeah,
version.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
Joe Cocker's approach to taking cover and like really making it his own.
Wow. Sir Paul McCartney agrees with "Get By with a Little Help from My Friends."
Oh,
you know, yeah,
absolutely.
his version.
And we cover a lot of.
Need anybody?
We cover a lot of Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, One After 909, Babies in Black.
Yeah.
A couple of other ones.
And
I've Just Seen a Face.
Oh, that's a great song.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's a
Yep.
That's like a solo acoustic like fan favorite to a lot of people.
It's a
I've just
fun
seen
song.
the face. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
it's a
fun
good
song.
one.
And some of those we don't change a whole lot.
No.
But I think they still have our fingerprint on them. And
Again, because almost everything we do is dual vocal. It's all harmony.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. When
You
you're
guys
doing
have that, and we've known each other for a few years now, dating back to pre-COVID, which we'll get in another segment. But yeah, phenomenal vocal harmonies and everything.
thanks.
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So take us to around 2001, 2003 time. You guys found your way up here to Vermont. You bought land, and when you were in Boston, did you guys have full-time jobs? Like
yeah.
between being like full-time performers, almost, I would imagine. So you come up here, and then. You're then primarily duo, still doing mainly original music. So then you made the switch, right?
We were always a rock band in Boston. And what happened was the band was falling apart. Even the Dropkick Murphys wanted us to be their opening.
Is that right? Nice.
Back then, like on this tour, in our drum, we had another drummer that was like against it, and we had another. We just had bad luck with drummers, like the movie Spinal Tap. So finally, one person, we said, we can't make this gig. We have a problem with our drummer. And they said, well, we don't care if two of you show up and just do an acoustic set.
And this was done in Providence.
And I said, that's a great idea. So I bought a pickup from my acoustic that I wrote songs on. And
And I had my acoustic. So we went down to this club and we played a 45-minute set as a duo.
and it just clicked. And the light bulb went off that we don't need anybody else. We can just do a duo thing.
Right.
And it's,
Right.
it's a lot less complicated.
Did you guys know that was going to happen going into that session, or you just like said, let's wing it, see what happens?
Yeah, it was just like, let's
Yeah.
swing it. But I actually, before even going in, I saw the possibilities. And I always wanted to be a guitarist. And I was always trying to step away from the bass.
But he's such a phenomenal bass player. He'll tell people.
Do you play bass every once in a while? Do you,
Very rarely. Very
Really?
rarely.
Yeah.
I will pick it up once in a while,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah. And so
But anyways, yeah. So you said that it's something you always wanted to do, guitar, and yeah.
and this just it just hit me, and I thought, I can get rid of all this big dumb gear. Just strip it down to an acoustic guitar.
This was before Facebook Marketplace, where you can sell everything no problem online now.
Yeah. And we bought the land, I think, by then.
We had
Yeah.
bought the land.
We just bought the land. We built our own house.
So
We did most of the work
I
ourselves.
I had a Marshall half stack and 2 Les Paul Juniors.
Wow.
And I was so done with rock bands that after we bought the land, all I wanted to do was sit home with graph paper and draw the house.
That's awesome.
Lay it all out, draw it, and just focus on that. It's just like I was so done.
How big is the house?
It's 26 by 32.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a cape.
Yeah.
And Mike was just he wanted to play guitar, so I said, take my Marshall half stack, take my spare Les Paul
Hand me
Junior,
downs. Yeah. There you go.
trade it all in, get the guitar of your dreams,
Yeah.
have at it. I'm just gonna draw my.
It's a good bargain deal, right, Mike?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had all my gear and your big huge SVT and his bass rig.
But I came home with a bass for her and a little bass amp, and I knew she always liked playing bass, and so I had this vision that we would be a duo and she would play bass.
Yeah.
And,
What is it about playing bass that you like the most, you would say?
You can zone on the instrument because it's a pattern, right? Bass playing it's patterns, and
Really focuses on your eyes, like looking at what you're doing on the, up and down the neck.
it can. But what I like about it is that it's just it's a repetitive thing, so it's almost meditative, So if you're really getting into a groove, I mean, that's why a lot of bass players are happy standing back by the drummer because they're in the zone, right? And then everything is built off the bass. and the drums. I mean, right hand and the drummer's right foot, right? They're married. And it's just this, it's the foundation, and it's powerful.
There's something to be said for when you go out and see one of your favorite bands, like when you're sitting in a seat and you just feel the bass and the bass drum just like bopping like underneath your rear end, and you just want to like move along.
Yeah, so that's really great about it. And then I didn't realize making the switch from rhythm guitar to bass, it's really difficult, especially if you're a lead singer.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you have a single note instrument and a single note instrument. Right? There's no chords in your strumming. It's both things are running very counter to each other. So
we were both at a level up here, and we were reduced to a level down here. So
Starting over.
It was starting over. It was new and exciting. I had never done anything other than backup vocals. So singing lead was like new and challenging, and it was just great to be a beginner again. I know that sounds kind of weird for some people.
it's like a musical rebirth.
Yeah.
It was
Right?
it was a definite renaissance.
Would you guys say in your time in rock bands that, I know you were saying you were kind of done with it. Does that equal to being burnt out, you would say, of like the scene and maybe
Definitely
the cutthroatness of the business around a city like Boston and just
we were burnt out, jaded.
Yeah.
And
it's common for a lot of people in bands.
and it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
I remember being in a club, it was like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. There wasn't many people in the room, and like the other earlier bands, and they were much younger kids, coming up, and like they were wide-eyed and excited, and I was just like, I hate
done.
this.
You were
I
so
hate
done.
this.
Yeah.
And this is stupid, and I don't want to be one of those guys that is like just, playing the same old thing forever. And I wanted something new, and it just happened, and it's been
Reminds
great.
me of what a comedian said one time in one of his specials years ago. I don't know if you've heard of the comedian Louis C.K., but he said one time years ago on a podcast, he goes, here's the deal, guys. I'm 41 now. I'm divorced, and the crowd goes completely like wild. They're like, oh, he goes, no, cut the shit. Divorce is always a good thing if it's not going well, blah blah blah. And he goes, but here's the problem. I'm single at 41 after 10 years of being married with 2 kids. That's like having a bunch of money in the currency of a country that doesn't exist anymore. And he goes, I have no single instincts. Like, I know too much now. That's no good for being single. Like, you have to be stupid. You have to have blinders on to be single or whatever. It's like, me, I'm 41. I've seen everything. What am I going to do now? Like, it's, I don't know. That was kind of like an odd analogy or whatever.
That's
but
okay. Because you're right, though. There is like this lost period. Like, what am I? Now what? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, now what?
Right.
Because the rules have changed.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the new rules are either.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you get kind of excited, right?
It's like I did a show in Cambridge, Mass. a couple of weeks ago, and I'm 35 now. I'm like 14 years removed from when I graduated college the first time. And college is a unique experience for everybody that goes to it, regardless of like how old you are, this and that. But I just remember doing like a late night show until 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I get to my Airbnb and go to bed by 3, and I have a brunch show at 11 the next day. Anyways, you just see like the college kids now, and with the phones and the technology, I'm just like, dude, I know I look still young like them. I can't relate to these people at all now. I can't relate to what they're doing. Yeah, I don't want to already sound like the young version of "Get Off My Lawn" when I was your age.
Right. Yeah.
But it's
but the thing
it's
is,
reconnecting with that group, and it's like you can't do it.
Yeah.
But you can though.
You can. Yeah.
And
Now, what club was that?
It was shout out to the folks in Cambridge, Grafton Street Pub and Grill, right in the heart of Cambridge. Nice area. Yeah, very friendly staff, good food there. So yeah.
So I find that we don't have too many problems connecting with all different ages. That's been pretty delightful,
right?
Actually,
I think maybe it was just more of the being up until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That since COVID, my body's adjusted from that. Haven't done much of that. That I think was where I was mainly going.
That's hard. That's hard.
But anyways, in general, tell us a little bit about your time in Vermont since you moved up here full time in 2007, correct? And how just being a duo for the better portion of almost like 20 years now has been, as far as connecting with the local Vermont communities, the local Vermont venues, how supportive the state is to arts and entertainment. Give us like a little bit of like a background on that.
It's been great. It's been, I never really did an open mic. I've done open jams. Like I got up with the bass and did blues jams in my early days, but I've never really done an open mic. And that was new and exciting. And I love open mics. I love the community and meeting other, singer-songwriters or
It's a great
musicians.
networking opportunity.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we love them just for that.
Yeah.
It's a great way to learn a new room.
Yep.
To meet new people, and just it's so supportive here.
And understand where they're coming from musically and mentally as well too.
Right.
Like how they write songs, how they interact with each other in the audience on stage. Everybody like operates differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah, but
completely
it's-
different scene.
It's such a great group of people that we've met.
We've been to barnyard jams.
Those are
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fiddles and all kinds
yeah,
of crazy
just
instruments.
Campfire, barbecues,
Yeah.
drinks, everything. Oh, it's
right,
great. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And so that plus open mics, meeting and seeing new people. It's always really exciting because you don't know what you're going to see. Yeah, it's been so supportive, and I mean I think musicians in Vermont want to see other musicians do well.
What are the main ones you guys have hit besides Neil's years ago? Did you guys do Killarney's? Have you done the New American Grill?
No,
Not
so
yet.
Londonderry and Ludlow are on our map for places. So we've been down in Brattleboro, we've been up to South Pomfret, Woodstock.
We're going full time this year.
Bellows
We're making the
Falls.
transition.
Oh, you are? Oh, very
yeah,
nice.
we're just
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are your day jobs nowadays, guys?
So I volunteer medical drive for
Medical drive,
one
right.
of the local bus companies, taking people to medical appointments, so dialysis, cancer
Sure.
treatment, that sort of thing.
and I drive for one of the same local company, bus company.
Great.
But
How many
Mike's-
years you guys been doing that now?
Almost since we moved here.
Yeah,
I
but-
worked in a machine shop for first half year.
Right.
I did a little bit tree removal.
You've done
So
a-
landscaping, yeah, you done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
That's great.
so in Boston, Mike was a bike courier.
Bike messenger.
Yeah,
Oh,
bike
oh,
messenger.
wow.
And he
Okay.
did that for years, and I'd get the phone call, "Oh, honey, I got hit by a car today,
Oh.
but I'm fine, but the bike is totaled." I mean, it's some crazy things like that. And
Yeah.
then after 9/11,
it's the way you phrase a conversation like that. It's like, I'm okay, don't worry.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So after 9/11,
Yeah.
he couldn't make money on the bike anymore. Because before they were just licensed, and he had a photo ID. He could just kind of sign in and run into an elevator and go up to the 16th
So it was
floor.
for security reasons.
Bags
like,
were searched.
Yeah,
everything.
so
The whole
Right.
world changed.
Before 9/11, a bike messenger working in Boston would get known by the security in the buildings, and so when they got to know you, and they knew you were okay, they would just like wave you in, but you're supposed to sign in. But they know that you're getting paid per package delivery.
Sure.
And somebody's waiting on that package. So they would just let you go in. But at 9/11, there were lines. You had
Bag
to go
checks.
scan and
Yeah.
and it just wasn't worth it. And so I started doing it in a car.
You started your own car career.
Yeah,
business.
I started my own business, and I was delivering art stuff for the art community and the printing community, and
Yeah.
up and down the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah.
So I would go everywhere from,
Boston to
To
Pennsylvania,
DC.
New York,
Yeah.
DC. Yeah.
yeah,
It was a scary time. Were you guys in Boston still when that day happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
watching it on TV. Watched the second plane go into the
Yeah.
tower.
And heard the F-16s up and down the coast all day, and yeah, it was crazy times.
Yeah, because those planes came right out of Logan.
Right.
They did.
So,
Yep.
Crazy.
bringing that's one of the reasons why we wanted out of the city too, was to just
Yeah.
get someplace where it was quiet and different.
Yeah.
And, rural.
Yeah. It's
so-
amazing. It happens, that long ago, but it still just feels like yesterday.
It does.
It does.
Just mentally, like it just if you were alive, regardless of how old you are, and we talked about this, just how much technology has changed since that day. So many concepts of human existence have changed since that day.
Since that day.
Since that day.
Yeah.
But starting with security also as well, too.
Right.
And,
Right.
Yeah.
So Mike had a harder time. I kept my Massachusetts job. At that time, I was a buyer. I bought tank trucks full of chemicals for a medical device manufacturer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
It was. I had done a lot of different jobs. I started as an optician.
Yeah.
Making eyeglasses and dispensing contact lenses, and then from there I got into the medical side, medical equipment side of ophthalmics. So cataract surgical equipment, all that kind of stuff. And from there I learned the business of buying and stock rooms and kitting and how devices get made.
Yep.
And then small startups in Cambridge, all these MIT geniuses start a business, and so you start like writing device histories and doing things to how a product is actually developed.
Yeah.
And then 9/11 happened, and one of the scientists' wife was a paralegal, and they needed an office manager at this downtown little law firm. So I did that for a while. It was terrible. And then from there, I got back into like buying again. So like I've worked all these crazy jobs just to play music.
Yeah.
Right? Just
I was
to
gonna say,
support everything.
how is it balancing like full-time work in addition to, I'm sure your band music career was starting to become almost like full-time jobs in and of itself, right? Like how was that managing all
It's
of
like
that?
having 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mean you work all day and get out if you're lucky at 3:30, and then you can be to the club by 6 and be home by 2 in the morning.
Barely any time any time to be home and like make sandwiches or like anything at like home. Yeah.
We were always running.
Yeah, being a bike messenger in Boston was worked well with playing in a band because I could flyer during the day, and just do a lot of band stuff during the day when I wasn't delivering packages. And
Yeah, he was promoting. He was meeting people. He was making connections, booking gigs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think nowadays face-to-face communication is still like the best way to get gigs or work in general.
Why I love an open mic.
Yeah,
Best way to meet people, meet whoever might be booking that room.
Bar managers, right? Exactly.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they get a taste. Do they like you? Do
Yeah.
they think you'll fit the room?
Sure.
And it's yeah.
There's also the mental component. Oh, maybe they had an off night. Let's hear what else they have another night.
Right.
Let's hear it.
No, and that's the thing about Vermont that I love is that again, everybody's supportive, right? Everybody wants to see everybody else succeed. It's like, oh, Sammy B's playing here and playing there. Yeah. You do a lot of stuff where you post stuff. So I'm like a fly on the wall. When I'm working, I can check out some of your videos that you've posted, and I think, oh, that room looks interesting. We should try to play there.
Good segue on that. I know you guys poke fun at yourself about the business side of things. How wild is it now with social media and more graphic designs to try to stay relevant on the internet, I'm sure, and you guys like still perform to some degree almost every week and every weekend, right? To some capacity.
We do in the summer a lot.
Yeah.
And this is why next year, this coming year, we're going to go full time. But we didn't even have to do a lot of promoting or seeking out gigs. A lot of them are coming to us. And that's convenient.
Which it's a good sign, yeah.
And, we're going to start trying to get back into doing the social media thing. It's a lot of work. I think you really have to narrow it down to what is appropriate for you. And for what you do.
Well, because if you think about it, sorry to interrupt real quick. A challenge that I have found is that the main 3 I use are Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All 3 of them have different distraction, eye-catching components for human beings. And we're all wired differently, which means the way we're using them, we all use them a little bit differently. Like Facebook, I guess we'll do kind of like a poll here. What do we think of Facebook mostly? Like a post, a picture? What do we think of like Facebook?
Yeah.
I think Facebook is good for connecting with your small local group. For the people that you interact with on Facebook that are around your age or in your group.
Right. Okay. How about Instagram?
Instagram, that's for going out and bringing people in.
Audience.
But what is it more? What do people think of with Instagram more than Facebook?
It's
pictures.
visual.
Pictures, right?
Yeah.
Visual,
Yeah.
and that includes reels. So then, what's TikTok?
Right.
And we haven't gotten
No,
into
yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So my humble take on it is I think TikTok and Instagram are very much connected with one another, but TikTok is more strictly videos. Instagram is photos, and then Facebook is kind of a mix of everything, but mostly worded posts.
Right.
So there's an English and literature component to all three of these social media platforms, but there's the visual content performance. And finding that balance of what works best for all of them that could catch you on the positive side of the algorithm, it's not an easy thing to master.
No.
And in a way, it's taken away from me from writing originals. I haven't written a lot of originals much lately just because I'm worried about what human beings out there on the cloud are going to see, hopefully, engaging posts. It's a pretty challenging thing to catch on to.
It's almost a full-time thing, too.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more time and energy to use social media than it used to when we just put flyers on telephone poles and, did mailings of postcards. I mean, we're talking about mailing lists, not email lists,
Yeah.
And really, what does an email list do today? I mean, I'm on a lot of different email lists, and I hardly ever look at them.
Right.
It's like I'm too busy
Right.
to look
Are
at an email.
people looking at emails like they used to?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think
I think
so.
their inbox is so overwhelmed. I know mine is,
Yeah.
and
Well, so much spam. I mean,
It's
I'm
so hard to
deleting spam.
unsubscribe,
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
exactly.
impossible. Yeah.
How do you
So-
unsubscribe from scammers? Someone has your information somewhere out there. They're
Absolutely.
always going to find it.
So
Yeah.
I think another thing that we don't use enough that would be helpful is it's Threads or X, which I don't really want to use.
Which
X
is
right
Twitter.
now, but
yeah, formerly known as Twitter. I
Right,
still call
right,
it tweets.
right,
Yeah.
tweets and Threads.
I haven't gotten on Threads yet, by the way, either. So I'll put that on my homework list of
I think
things
once you
to do.
start
it's
something
quick.
like that,
Yeah.
It's quick little. It's almost like a text to the masses,
Yeah,
right? You don't have.
yeah.
It's texting to a ton of people.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is what Twitter has kind of always been.
Right, right, yeah.
But you leave it open for a comment section for people to fight back and forth with each other.
And
most of social media, by the way.
Absolutely. And because our attention spans now are less than 10 seconds, that little, hey, gig here at this time,
Right.
or just engaging with people, I think is, we're all moving
Are you guys
fast.
active still on your YouTube channel, the Milkhouse Heaters?
no, we got to get back to that.
Not as active as we
Subscribe to them also too on YouTube, the Milkhouse Heaters. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
welcome.
all
Absolutely.
of these platforms only work, or they work best when it's regularly scheduled.
For the algorithm.
And it's you
Right.
really gotta keep.
Well,
it
which
going.
again is hard for just one person to do when you're also supposed to be keep pushing the envelope with writing albums and songs. And
I have to say I'm blessed. He's prolific. He could write a song a day, no problem.
Yeah.
And I mean
That's an art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in and of itself.
It's an art, but it's a gift, right?
Yeah,
Because
it is.
they're all pretty good, right?
is.
And
Yeah.
then some of them are just over the top stellar. And
Did
Thanks.
you get comfortable with that over time, or it was always some? Was it a lot of practice doing that, or it always kind of came naturally?
So I was a terrible songwriter when I first started, and I didn't know what to write about. I didn't have anything interesting enough in my life when I was younger, I don't think. And I didn't know, and plus you have to be real. Once you get real and are willing to put out your true feelings and not censor it, you have to remove that censor that's between you and the page.
Sure.
And
To not be afraid what others are going to think
have
from
to
hearing
not be
about your own
afraid, yeah.
experiences, right?
And you
Right.
just have to go for it. And
Was there one particular moment that stuck out to you that, like, hey, now I feel comfortable with expressing my experiences or my feelings out in a song form?
no, it took time. It took time, and I think that the more you do something, the better you get. It's like skiing or snowboarding or something. You're not going to be good right away, you know.
Right.
It's in songwriting. It's a learned practice. I would love to go along and say that I'm like special or something, and that's what you want people to believe when you're younger. But the truth is just like writing as like writing a book like Stephen King. I'm sure he didn't just start writing great stories right off the bat. Maybe he had an interesting start,
Right.
But it's definitely something that's learned, and it's like the more I do it, the more it comes, and you have to open up to let it in, and when it starts flowing, it's like you better be ready to like write it down. There's times when I'm at work and I'm driving, and I have to keep it going in my head so that I don't forget it by the time I get home. But
it's kind of like when you're thinking of writing lyrics or thinking of a part to a song, you pick up your guitar and you've got a 4 to 6 chord progression like in your mind. And it's like, okay, I better write down what chords they are and 4/4 or 3/4 or 6/8, whatever it might be time signature wise, or take out my smartphone, put on my camera roll, record it, and then that way it's in the camera roll so I can remember when I'm trying to finish the song.
Or voice memos.
Voice memos, and then for lyrics you can get like the notes app out and you can type the notes out or stuff, or just write it on a piece of paper and then take a snapshot of it. Like, so for me, like when I'm doing shows, I have a lot of my songs lyrically memorized now. Like I admit, like I never thought I was going to be a full-time singer years ago in addition to the guitar. So when paper was starting to become a thing of the past, like with phones and everything, and you can see I still use paper, I just took some of my old 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper that I printed off printers, and I took screenshots of them on my iPad, and that's my lyrics right there. So now less paper, I just like go like this now on the pad.
That's nice. Yeah.
Because I never quite mastered that app on Song, like which you can find like all the lyrics to some of your heroes' covers. And I'm just, like I said, partially lazy too to some of the technology.
But there's so much though when you think about, you know, the gigging. You know, you're loading your car, so you care for your gear. You load your car. You have to get there early. You have to set up. You've got to sound check yourself.
Yeah.
Then you've got to wait till it's time for you to play. It's like there's not a lot of time in the day for everything that we do. And then on top of it, you need to learn for social media. You better know Pro Tools. You better know Studio One or some other type of recording thing. I mean, and you.
GarageBand, any of these ones,
and then, you have to edit,
any of these ones.
and you have to put everything together, and then you've got to learn how to, you know, put your text in there and do all of these other things, and then uploading, you've got to learn how to do that. There's so many steps to it now that it's all.
And then when do you sleep? When you're dead?
Right. and then, you know, if you're working a job, you've got like all of these other things too.
It's almost like overload in your mind, but hey, in a good way, kind of, right? And then it's up to us. This is the psychological aspect of human beings. We then have to pick and choose what do we want to devote our time to. Right. And which is a great segue. Just tell us a little bit about some of your favorite shows that are going to be coming up or favorite venues if you're going full-time next year, right? Correct? You're thinking of going full-time as the duo next year?
We are going full-time.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite venues, some upcoming shows that you have coming up and everything. And
so, a lot of the shows are dying down,
now for us.
Next year we did some busking on Church Street.
Oh yeah,
in Burlington.
Yeah. That's really fun, busking on Church Street. And then we were the featured unplugged acoustic artist. They do that every Friday on Church Street, so that was fun to do that.
Let's get a good turnout for that, I would imagine.
It's good. Yeah. It's good.
We're looking forward to playing the New American Grill and any place that we can. We've just started doing gigs this summer at the Scott Farm. We hope to be back there.
Scott Farm Orchard
next year
down in Dummerston. That was great. We did their grand finale. It was like a heirloom apple day, and they wanted music from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And so we were like, that's a lot. That's 6 hours. So can we split it with Bill Brink?
Yeah.
So we split it with Bill Brink.
His name actually just popped up in my head. I was just going to mention if you guys have put on festivals with him in June, you know.
We've done a lot with Bill in June. Let's see, just a lot of people. I mean, Jim Yeager, we've done a Taste of Woodstock with him a couple of times. He had a residency at the Woodstock Inn that he has special guests that we had done that when he was doing that.
I'll give you a few on your radar. You should look at that. You probably know that I've played at. Well, this one I didn't, but the Tap to Table Festival at Stuart Maple up in Cuttingsville, which is near Shrewsbury.
Right.
It's like the first weekend of October. But you should also look at, shout out to all these places, by the way.
Right.
the Chester Festival on the Green,
That
right,
would be
right in the
fun.
heart there. That'd be
would
an
be fun.
awesome venue for you
Absolutely.
guys.
Yeah, we've done the Bellows Falls Festival 2 years in a row. That was fun. Of course, back when there was Roots on the River, we used to play that. We were on staff for that for years.
I think you guys would kill it also at the Jackson Gore Friday Night Concert Series if they're willing to pull off a duo at Okemo.
That would be fun.
I could put a good word in for
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
So for us, it's just...
We're looking forward to exploring
Oh, yeah.
a lot of
Yeah,
places, and we're willing to play anywhere. And
Yeah.
and a lot of the fun that we've had has come through just being willing to show up and try stuff.
Right, right. And
And-
you just played at Ciao Popolo.
I did,
And
yeah.
We just played there.
Shout out to
as well,
Darlene
so
and
shout out
Pizza
to
Stone
Darlene
also,
for that,
too,
and
yeah.
Pizza Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the usual rooms, we just
Yeah.
haven't branched Ludlow way yet. But
Yeah.
it's on our radar. We need to...
I think if there's any
Branch out
advice,
more.
I think if there's any advice I can give you guys that you may or may not already know, what I've seen as being like a full-time solo acoustic artist, especially here in Vermont, where it's you have to have that go-getter mentality, and you gotta like always remember, do it all for yourself and be consistent. No one else is going to do it for you. Just kind of always, whatever it is that you're passionate about, just stay hungry with it, stay consistent with it. And a lot of it kind of relates to a lost art in society in general is simply showing up and being consistent with that. And also relating to things like manners for people or holding the door open for people. A big common thing you hear in the workforce, because this is work that we do. I consider this work. We should consider this work.
Oh, yeah,
is
absolutely.
Just showing up. Like, people want to see your professionalism most of the time. Dressing accordingly, like we talked about earlier in the podcast. So any places you're going to in Vermont, just treat it like you would in Boston with a nice, humble approach. Just be consistent and show up and put in your A game, and I think you guys are going to do great wherever it is that you go across the state.
Thanks. Yeah, that's what we do. Show up.
Yeah.
Show up and play.
I forgot to ask, favorite influences?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Dip into that a little bit.
So, yeah, as a child, I'd have to say, it was the Beatles, the Stones. As I got older, it was more R&B, more blues. And then I fell into the folk world. Yeah, it would be some Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni Mitchell. Yeah, pretty much. Then I went full on into punk rock. Buzzcocks, Clash, Sex Pistols, all of that, and went down that road for a long time. Yeah.
And you mentioned obviously the Police and Rush and
all the stuff that Jan just mentioned, and like there was a lot of Boston bands that were great.
Dropkick Murphys, to name one also.
Dropkick Murphys.
And before the Dropkick Murphys, there was the Outlets, and the two brothers in the Outlets that went on, one of them with the Dropkick Murphys. So yeah.
And there was like Gary Shane and the Detour and
what
the
about
Atlantics.
Aerosmith? One of the most famous Boston bands like around Aerosmith.
Yeah, I'd seen them a few times. Yeah. Yep. Of course, the band Boston.
Oh, I love Boston.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
first two albums are gold.
Oh yeah. So
And I like a lot of reggae, world music, a lot of indie stuff. I like Vampire Weekend. I think they're
that's a great band. Yeah.
Arcade Fire.
Yep, Arcade Fire is great.
Like I'm always searching out, looking for stuff. And that.
How about
that
the Killers? You like the Killers?
I love the Killers.
Killers
yeah.
are great group. Yeah.
The Strokes.
Strokes are
They were-
good.
they were great.
White Stripes or
Yeah,
White
whatever
Stripes,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Jet.
Jet was a great band.
Yeah.
You know what? Probably a different genre, but a band I've gotten into a lot over the last couple of years, and I never did as a kid. Death Cab for Cutie.
Yes, great.
Love
Yeah,
that
yeah.
band.
I do too,
Yeah. Oh, bass playing wise, Incubus. That's another phenomenal band. I love the bass playing in Incubus.
I'm not. I've heard the name and I know that they're kind of what they do, but I was never really. They were never really something I listened to. But,
No worries.
I know they're kind of an intense. Funky, I think.
Yeah. There's a phenomenal bass player. I love bass players like of all different genres. Like 'cause I went to school for jazz performance with guitar. But there's a female bass player. You might have heard the name. I think she looks like she's 12, but she's almost in her 40s now. Tal Wokenfeld.
Yeah.
So her claim to fame was for years playing with the late great Jeff Beck and drummer Vinnie Colaiuta. She actually was the fill-in bass player for Incubus a couple of summers ago,
wow.
and I saw that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. And she puts this amazing post online. She's like, wow, I'm a kid living my dreams right now. I loved listening to this band growing up.
But she's in her 40s, isn't she?
I think so, yeah.
She's not like a kid.
But this is a phenomenal like female jazz bass player that played with Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
And she's like idolizing the opportunity playing with Incubus. That's freaking awesome,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Maybe
But
she's in her
Jeff Beck,
30s.
I don't know. But
there's very few genres that we don't love. I mean,
Yeah.
we just appreciate.
I loved the Jeff Beck group when I was younger.
was that with Rod Stewart on
Yeah.
vocals? Yeah.
That he introduced Rod
Oh,
Stewart
and you
as
love
a
the
singer.
whole the Small Faces and all
Small
of
Faces,
that. Yeah.
Right.
Humble
Yeah.
Pie.
Oh my God, that was Frampton's old band, right?
Right,
Humble
yes.
Pie before
Yeah.
Frampton Comes
Yeah.
Alive. Yeah. It's my mom's first concert, by the way.
Oh, fun.
Frampton Comes
Fun.
Alive. Yeah. What was your guys' first concert?
Queen.
Nice.
I'm trying to think
My
of
girlfriend loves Queen.
Bohemian Rhapsody tour.
We
Yeah.
we were just doing a what's your favorite Queen song comparison last night, watching Jeopardy, I think. Yeah.
That's
So,
fun.
Yeah.
You know the one I want to cover right now, just also for just the bass line is Crazy Little Thing Called Love.
Oh,
What a
yeah.
Great cover that would be. Yeah.
A
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of chord changes on that song also,
fast
too.
song.
My favorite part is the bam, 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 bum, bum,
Right.
bum, 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 bum.
It's a great break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
That's my lame Fred. I sound more like Bob Dylan doing Freddie Mercury. It's a crazy little thing called love. Oh, my
That would be a
goodness.
great cover.
Yeah, right?
Bob Dylan covering Queen.
Oh, Bob
Yeah.
Dylan doing anybody. Yeah.
Right. Good fun.
Oh,
Good fun.
oh my God. What could be a funny one for Bob Dylan? So there's like I don't know. Pick like someone I might know. Think of like an iconic voice. Think of an iconic voice. It could be
Neil
Brad
Young?
Delp from Neil Young, yeah. Yeah, kind of along the same genre. Okay. Come a little bit closer. Hear what I have to say. On this harvest moon. Yeah. So yeah, you could kind of like make Bob Dylan parodies or anything. Shout out to Bob
Absolutely.
Dylan. He's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anyways, this has been fantastic. Guys, once again, Jan and Mike Sheehy of the Milkhouse Heater. Thank you for the CD, by the way. I'm going to listen to this here. Are you guys on Spotify or streaming platforms yet with your music?
We're so bad with the business.
You're getting there, though, right?
That CD is out there
It
on
is out there.
When was this released, by the way? This is
2013.
Farmhands and Factory Girls. What year is it?
2013.
2013.
We
yeah.
got to get in the studio. We have
Yeah.
like
We've got a lot of stuff started in the studio and nothing finished. So.
How many originals would you say you have in the can ready to
we could
record and
easily drop a
produce?
triple album
Right.
and then drop another triple album.
Another triple
Right,
album.
right.
and
Yeah.
then still have more
for B-sides.
for B-sides on the singles. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You guys want to give any special shout outs to anybody on this podcast episode who may be watching?
So I always want to give a shout out to Jim Yeager, always.
Shout out, Jim.
Jim's been
Love you, Jim.
phenomenal over the years. Met him when he did a lot of open mics starting at the Skunk.
The Skunk, yeah. So you guys
yeah.
have done the Skunk. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
I think one of the most gracious singer-songwriters that goes and supports everybody is Pat Dodona.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's a fabulous person.
Bill and June Brink
Bill and June
do
Yes,
a lot for
all
the
been
Springfield
on the
area.
podcast here too.
Yeah.
All fabulous
Yeah.
people. Yeah, shout out to all these guys.
Another musical couple, Dan and Faith. They are like,
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of those guys.
Really,
You should have
really-
them on
I
the
got to
show.
get those guys on,
Yeah,
on my radar.
um,
yeah.
they are like today's modern version of 60s protest folk.
Yeah.
Just like they've got a solidly good message, and they're really interesting people and very talented.
Yeah.
And of course all the folks that make things happen, all the club owners, all the
Yeah.
Our friends in Bellows Falls.
Oh yeah,
Vermont.
yeah. I
Yeah,
want to thank
yeah.
Darlene, of course, with getting Ciao Popolo up and going, because it used to be Popolo and Gary Smith, and nod to Gary and his legacy.
Charlie Hunter, because he did our artwork
yeah.
on that.
Charlie
CD.
Hunter. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And Charlie
yeah.
used to.
He brought us to this area.
Yeah, it was just.
That's
we
right.
didn't
You were
know
saying
him,
he was
but-
the catalyst for
Yeah.
getting you
He
guys up
was,
here,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Him and
Mark-
Robert McBride in
Yeah.
Bellows Falls.
And then Stage 33 Live, Mark
Pepcorn.
It's a listening room. It's in an old factory building in
That's in Bellows Falls, right? Yeah, I think I've been there before. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And he has a YouTube channel, Stage 33 Live, so it's, or S33L.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be pretty busy with the radio station WOOL. We want to thank them. But his new project, live performance, listening room, you go in and you see some phenomenal stuff. We just saw John Langford from the Mekons.
Oh, nice.
Just great stuff. And then he puts it all out. It's nonprofit. People pay whatever at the door, and every penny goes to the artist.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's
Awesome.
big shout out to Mark.
And we have WOOL,
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah.
Black Sheep Radio.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we have Fact TV, which is where I learned how to do editing. And community TV is such a great
It is.
resource.
Yeah, thank you
Including
so much to
Okemo Valley
Okemo Valley.
TV
Okemo
also
Valley,
too.
A
Yeah.
lot of people
yeah.
don't know that you can come to a place like this and learn how to do a lot of the TV production stuff.
Podcasts, radio interviews,
and-
and live studio recordings also too. We encourage people to get bands in here also too. You guys can do a show here sometime as well
fabulous,
too.
yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, there's just so. I mean, and I'm beg forgiveness for anyone that I may have forgotten, but there's just
Family,
so many.
siblings, parents, everybody.
Martha,
Yeah.
we say hi to Martha.
Martha, yeah, she's like the biggest supporter of music.
Sandy Cathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you to Patrick and Rebecca as well for
Yeah.
warmth and
Absolutely,
kindness and
yeah.
making us feel at home here.
You're most welcome.
Yeah. Oz has spoken. And then tell the audience again where they can find you online.
Yeah, so you can go
Currently,
to,
you have more things in the work, obviously.
so
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the milkhouseheaters.com is where
That's the
everything-
website?
Yep.
and then YouTube / the Milkhouse Heaters.
I forget. Are you guys on Instagram yet?
Yeah,
I thought
there's
you are. Yeah.
Milkhouse Mike and
There's
Milkhouse
links
Jam.
to
Yeah.
there's links to most of that stuff from
on
our
the website page.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to give a special shout out to two artists that have been on this podcast already, actually. And the first one is our good friend Brianna Elaine, a singer-songwriter from further up north.
I saw that show. It was great.
Yeah. She has been going through some very difficult, serious health issues the last couple of months with pancreatic disease or issues and everything. And she has a GoFundMe that is up there. But I bring her up specifically because she's a fabulous artist. And I also want to give a shout out to the debut podcast interviewer on the Tasty Twist, Miss Allison Catherine Turner, also known as Allie T. Her, myself, and also good friends Phil Henry, George Nostrom, we're going to be donating a couple of half-hour sets up at Wicked Sister or Sister Wicked up in Brandon this Sunday in support of Brianna Elaine. So there's going to be 4 or 5 hours to help out Brianna Elaine, and check her out, BriannaElaineMusic.com, with all the links for her socials and everything. So, and that being said, Jan and Mike, thank you guys very much we could go on for like another hour, and I hope to have you back for another episode and everything. And
We'd love that.
Yeah. we could talk more like shows, sports, all different stuff. But thank you guys for your time, and check them out online, guys. The Milkhouse Heaters, Jan and Mike Sheehy, and this has been another great episode, number 35 to be exact, of the Tasty Twist with Sammy B. Thank you, Okemo Valley TV. We'll catch you guys all next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hurry now, my darling.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of the Tasty Twist with Sammy B. You can watch all the episodes of this podcast on Okemo Valley TV's YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. You can visit their website, okemovalley.tv, consider downloading their mobile app, or watch them on live television via VTEL, channel 166 and 167, Comcast 1076 and 1086. Are you interested in supporting a local media station? Please consider becoming a member today. Visit okemovalley.tv for more information.